Welcome to the Freight Project Podcast, brought to you by Ceresys, a North American third-party logistics company providing shippers transportation management, technology, and solutions.
On today's The Freight Project Podcast episode, I welcome Carly Morano, the team lead for our Freight Claims Management Department. As with any first-time guest, you'll get to know Carly's background in the logistics industry, primarily focused on customer service for shippers. On the episode, Carly and I will have a great discussion around best practices and tips for effective freight claims management. First, Carly will share our team approach to effective freight claims management here at Ceresys and what each team member's role is on the team. Carly first lays out what types of freight claims that a shipper may file in the process of freight claims management. She then provides some great tips around how to mitigate freight claims instances and if a shipper can be proactive to the mitigation of freight claims. Next, Carly will provide considerations a shipper should make when it comes to gathering documentation and initial information when first filing a freight claim, as well as explaining how to work with carriers if a freight claim declination occurs. Moving along, Carly then offers what benefits a shipper sees if they are more effective at freight claims management, what are the challenges if a shipper fails to file freight claims on time or effectively, and finally, what are some common mistakes or misconceptions around effective freight claims management? We hope you enjoy this episode of the Freight Project Podcast. Well, hello, Carly, and thanks so much for being on as a valued subject matter expert on the Freight Project Podcast. As with any first-time guest, let's first get to know who you are. So, Carly, if you could please tell the great listeners out there, what do you do here at Ceresys, and what's your experience in the logistics industry?
Certainly. I am the team lead or supervisor of the damage claims department here at Ceresys. The claims department is comprised of 2 expert administrators and 2 expert support agents, and myself as the lead. We handle cargo loss and damage claims for Ceresys customers, and we work to recoup any money lost due to carrier negligence. I have been in the logistics industry for about 5 years and at Ceresys for about 2.5.
2.5 already?
Already.
Man, time flies. Well, good. Thanks for letting everybody know who you are. So Carly is on today to give her expertise around an area that I'm sure no shipper really likes to deal with, and that's freight claims. So as the freight claims management team lead, can you tell our listeners a bit about your role and kind of what you do, as well as the role of the members on your team, kind of sharing a little bit about what those members do as well on behalf of our shipper customers?
Absolutely. As I just kind of mentioned, the claims department is comprised of 2 administrators, 2 support agents. In the LTL world, unfortunately, sometimes freight gets damaged or lost while in transit in the carrier's hands. Carriers handle a lot of cargo these days, and the freight is always on the move from terminal to terminal, en route to its destination as quickly as possible. So in the event that our customers experience freight damage or loss, the claims team handles their damage claims for them through every step of the process. We compile the evidence and the documentation. We determine the proper value of loss that needs to be reimbursed, file it against the carrier on behalf of our shipper customers. And then we negotiate and dispute with the carrier, which is a bulk of the time that's taken up on the life of a claim. And then finally, the claim's concluded with either a refund, a settlement, or resolution of some sort. Accuracy is key within the department as we're dealing with customers' profit loss. So as the team lead, it's my job to ensure the quality of my employees' work and the work product that comes out of the department itself. And we're always striving for customer satisfaction.
Well, that's great. And I was talking to a colleague of yours, a peer at Ceresys, Dan Lane. He's a team lead of one of our customer service teams, and I really was appreciative, and I hope our customers are too, that we've really been able to grow as such a company where we have kind of these checks and balances for quality of service, not just being there for our customers, but really making sure that they're well taken care of, that we're following up, that we're being proactive. So, really appreciate you kind of going through that a little bit. So, that solid team approach is pretty reassuring. If I was a shipper, I'm going to try and do each shipment as problem-free as possible. And obviously, these shipping exceptions come up, like freight damage or loss claims. And so for today's discussion, I really want to hone in on that freight claims management discipline. So before I think we get into some tips on how to better manage freight claims in general, I think it's important for us to kind of understand, the types of freight claims that we process for our customers. So can you give us a little more detail about those various types of freight claims that we work on?
Absolutely. So consignees, or the receiving warehouse of a shipment, have a legal responsibility to perform a brief inspection of the goods at the time of delivery. So in the LTL world, a delivery receipt is the piece of paper that's presented when the driver arrives at the receiving warehouse, and it's got a spot for the driver to sign, a spot for the consignee or receiving warehouse to sign. And so that makes it a legally binding document. This is where any notation of the condition of the goods should be recorded. That is how carrier liability is established, with the notation on that delivery receipt. And then that will affect what type of claim can be filed and how much money you'll be able to recoup from the carrier. So there's a few common types of claims that we see here at the Ceresys Claims Department. So I'll just kind of go over the main few. Damage is your most common, where when damage is clearly visible at the time of delivery and it's noted on the delivery receipt, then the way that we code said claim to the carrier is damaged. So receivers can write really anything on the delivery receipt. They can write something specific like washing machine crushed, dented, or they can just simply write the word damage. It's important, though, to notate the damage to the product itself, because if there ever is damage to just the packaging, but the product is fine, that's not really going to be a product loss in that case. So then that'll kind of turn out differently down the road for a claim. Second type or code that we use in the claims department is damaged and refused. So if all or most of the shipment is damaged when the driver arrives at that consignee warehouse, or if maybe the type of product that's being delivered is completely unusable if any part is damaged, the receiver does have the right to refuse the shipment. So they would still make a notation on the delivery receipt, and it can be as simple as refused due to damage, but the driver would then take the goods back and work with the shipper or Ceresys, the third party, on what to do with those goods at that time, whether it's returned to the shipper for potential, repair or disposal if they're just completely damaged beyond any salvage. The next claim that we see is shortage. So if part of a shipment is missing at delivery, the consignee does have the legal obligation to count what is being delivered and then notate any shortages on the delivery receipt. Similar to that is lost in transit. However, this is when the entire shipment has just gone missing. It is possible for an entire shipment to go missing. LTL often deals with shipments comprised of maybe just one or two pieces. So if freight gets separated from its shipping documents or paperwork, then the carrier doesn't have a way to identify who this freight is intended for, where it came from, anything like that. So it's not really easy for the carrier then to just look at a package with maybe not a lot of markings and properly identify where it's supposed to go. So it can be misrouted somewhere else. It can be looked over and potentially just in a terminal. So after a certain period of time, if they're unable to locate the goods, the shipment is coded as all short. And then we file a claim coded as lost in transit, which is different from a shortage in just the sense that in a shortage situation, something is delivered. It's just not everything that was expected. And
lost in transit is just the entire thing is gone.
Yep, disappeared into thin air.
Ooh, that's a bad day.
That's
I'm
a
sure,
bad day. Yes,
happens.
Unfortunately, it does. Yes. So then, in those cases, obviously, our shippers can work with their vendors or their own warehouse to get a replacement sent out. And then on the back end, our claims department is going to do everything we can to make sure that they get reimbursed as quickly as possible for what was lost, because then in this case, they're spending the money to have two orders created or shipped. And then we obviously want to get them reimbursed for that first one. And then the last final code or claim type is the The most dreaded concealed, so concealed damage or concealed shortage. And so a claim is considered concealed when the damage or shortage is not recorded on the delivery receipt. Unfortunately, in cases of concealed damage or shortage, carrier liability is not proven, and it's up to the claimant to then furnish evidence that the carrier is at fault. So without that notation on the delivery paperwork, it's very difficult to prove that damage occurred in the carrier's possession as opposed to before or after shipping. And with concealed claims, there's a 5-day window only, meaning 5 business days from the date of delivery, that the damage can be reported to the carrier in order for them to consider any settlement down the road on a future claim. So this happens when one of our shipper customers ships a lot of furniture. So if you've got a sofa that's encased in a box, which is then strapped to a pallet and shrink wrapped, and maybe that package, meaning the whole thing with all the packaging, the pallet, the shrink wrap, the box, arrives to the receiving warehouse, and it looks okay, maybe a little banged up, but they take a quick peek in and the sofa looks all right. Well, then they actually unwrap it once the driver has left their dock. They've signed the delivery receipt free and clear. Then they discover that the leg is completely broken or something that they just couldn't see when the driver was there. That is considered concealed damage because the delivery receipt was signed by the receiving warehouse saying this is in good condition, we're good to go. So then we have to have a bit of a quicker turnaround time with the carrier in order to report that damage and have any chance at a settlement down the road.
Yeah, I can see why that would be one of the most feared ones to deal with. Probably because it's an after the fact kind of thing and you think you're good to go and then all of a sudden you aren't. There's nothing frustrating than that kind of occurrence in life. So, it sounds like these shippers, again, I say it a lot on this podcast, being a shipper has got to be really hard. So I appreciate all the shippers out there who are making sure we all get our stuff because we need our stuff. I need my couch. So is this something that shippers just sort of have to be like, okay, well, it's going to happen. And, I'm going to do my best to mitigate freight claims. Is it more of a reactive type of practice, freight claims management? Or is this something maybe, are there some tips that would allow a shipper to be more proactive and how?
Sure. It's a bit of both. Unfortunately, it is going to be reactive sometimes. A shipper can package their sofa with all kinds of reinforcements to avoid a carrier damaging it. But then sometimes if, the carrier's just inundated with freight and they're moving it too quickly and someone's a little careless somewhere, something might happen. So a lot of it is reactive, but there are certainly things that some shippers can do to be proactive in terms of trends. So something that the Ceresys Claims Department does is we work with a lot of different customers that ship a lot of different things. And we always try to look at trends like in certain lanes, meaning from one region to another region or one specific zip code or city to another. Are there certain carriers that are often damaging freight in that lane? Or are there certain vendors that maybe packaging is coming up and the carrier is denying a claim for inadequate packaging? So if one of our customers is consistently seeing claims come from one vendor that's disputed by the carrier as improper packaging, then it may behoove that customer or shipper to have a conversation with their vendor, or if the shipper is in fact the actual shipper of the goods, the manufacturer of the goods, then maybe kind of look internally on how they package the product and maybe if there's a way to make that packaging more robust or adequate for the LTL world. If shippers are seeing damage consistently with one specific carrier, either in a specific lane or just that carrier in general, they might consider taking that carrier out of their profile per se, or, just looking into other carriers and other options. So a big piece that we do at Ceresys is educating our customers on the trends that we're seeing, just so that they can be better prepared and hopefully mitigate freight claim instances.
Yeah, that's key. I think yesterday we had a webinar with our partners, PureBridge, that helps us with our parcel capability. It gives us that multi-carrier presence that we've had on the LTL side for 2 decades. And so, LTL shippers are starting to see increased parcel volumes themselves. You talked about furniture. There's now a handoff to a final mile carrier in some of these furniture deliveries. So more touch points obviously creates more opportunity for damage, maybe concealed damage as well, or lost as well in transit. But, these LTL shippers need to understand those changes, and they need to be educated and keep up on top of these things so they can stay proactive. And I think one of the things you mentioned several times so far is documentation, right? Writing the right thing, making sure you're inspecting, making sure you have pictures, those kinds of things. What are some of the considerations a shipper should make when it comes to gathering documentation and the initial information when first going to get ready to file a freight claim? Is it just the marking on the delivery receipt, or what else should they be getting together?
The marking on the delivery receipt is obviously paramount at the time of delivery, but then afterwards, shippers, customers, claimants, Ceresys, working on behalf of our customer, legally we have 9 months to file a claim after the date of delivery. So after that notation is or is not made, obviously then our customers need to work with their receiving warehouses, any party to the shipment really, to gather, like you said, what is needed. So we rely on what our customers provide us to use against the carrier, and we always err on the side of the more the merrier when it comes to documentation for a damage claim. So if they've got a packing list, even if the shipper customer doesn't really think the packing list will apply to the claim, send it to us anyways, because our expert agents are going to be the ones to determine the carrier might need to see this information, or the carrier probably won't care and we'll just keep that internal or something like that. But photos are huge. You kind of can relate it to like an insurance claim if you crash your car. Insurance isn't just going to pay you to get a new car if they have no evidence of the actual extent of the damage. So if that sofa arrives and the leg is crushed, cracked, broken, you want to get photos of the damage, of how the packaging looked, so that we can take that back to the carrier and show them exactly what it looked like at time of delivery. Reports, any documentation that pertains to the shipment, I always say, send it over to us. Our experts will determine if it will help your case. There are certain documents that are required on a damage claim, most of which we're able to get from the carrier, which is like a signed bill of lading from time of pickup, the signed delivery receipt that we've spoken a lot about from time of delivery, or any kind of freight charge invoices that have to do with the paying of the freight charges. From our customers, we need a cost or a sales invoice that reflects the value of the item or items that were damaged or lost by the carrier. So anytime a sale is made or a purchase is made, there's an invoice generated for that, obviously, and we need to be able to show the carrier exactly what the value is that was lost due to their negligence, so that we can get an accurate reimbursement for the customer. And then we also just highly, highly recommend providing pictures. Photos really are the best proof of the extent and nature of the damage.
Yeah, we all have smartphones these days, so that's getting easier, right?
Right, absolutely.
And I'm going to try and get a brand new car through Progressive later today without any pictures. I'll let you know how that goes. Maybe I'll get me a new Tesla. I don't know.
Maybe.
Probably not, though. As you're right, I'm sure they'll say, well, are you sure you got in a wreck? We need some proof, buddy. And yeah, not going to work out. But, obviously once you put that information together and you're filing your freight claim and you start working with the carrier, some things might come up. In fact, you might get a declination or when they deny the claim, or maybe they just have more probative questions. They want more information. What's a shipper supposed to do? Just give up? Or how's an effective way to overcome some of those, carrier relations type situations with freight claims?
Right, absolutely. Unfortunately, you do see declinations often because the carrier's job, the carrier's claim department's job is really to try and mitigate their payout. So at Ceresys, in our claims department, I think I had mentioned earlier that a bulk of what our experts do, or they handle that negotiation and that disputing with the carrier. So if the carrier comes back with potentially a bogus denial, or they just really need more information, more details, our experts are there to kind of fight tooth and nail for our shippers if the denial is unfair. But there can be so many different situations. So it's kind of a tough question to answer in a general sense, but the best thing is really to be as detailed as possible. So if a carrier has questions, it's because they're working to understand the situation as well. So it's just best to be as clear and detailed as possible when answering those questions. And as far as disputing denials, it really depends on the basis. So if a carrier is denying a claim based on, say, inadequate packaging, the next step would be to research the NMFC item's packaging requirements and the shipper's packaging process or the materials. If evidence shows that the item was properly packaged within those requirements, then we use those facts and evidence to dispute that. However, the ultimate resolution of any loss or damage claim must be fair and legal. So, unfortunately, if the packaging of the item was in fact maybe not up to snuff, shippers must also be aware of this and then address the possibility of correcting it for future shipments. But a big piece that carriers deny claims for is mitigation. So, mitigation of loss. Basically, if a table has a scuff on the surface, the carrier will likely deny a claim for the full value and state that the loss can be mitigated. Claimants have a legal requirement to mitigate any claim when possible. So if the end customer would agree to keep that scuff table with a discount, the claim can be mitigated by filing for just the lost profit of the discount, or if something can be repaired, we can file for repair costs versus a cost of a full replacement, which would then be higher. So carriers will come back and deny and say, you filed for the full cost of this item, but judging the other evidence provided, like photos or anything like that, we don't think that it's a total loss. So either we can provide, if it actually is a total loss, then our shippers can provide us with maybe a statement saying this is why it can't be repaired, for reasons A, B, and C. Maybe it's a safety hazard. Or we then work with our shippers or customers to repair it, to provide a discount, to kind of move forward that way. So then the carriers are much more apt to pay in full versus deny or settle.
Yeah, well, those are really some good tips. And I think just a shipper, being aware of their freight is probably a key point. Their product makes it even more vital that, the logistics team at a company is working pretty well with sales, customer service, and marketing, and collaborating so they can kind of understand customers and understand their marketing channels and what feedback might occur if there are high instances of damage from customers. And there's just a ton of things that can be negative about freight claims. But if you're proactive, as you're saying here, then there can be a lot of benefits. So now that you have laid out some of those challenges and some best practices in dealing with carriers and the information you need to gather to do an appropriate freight claim file, those shippers who are confident at freight claims management, say maybe some of our shipper customers, they're having us do it on their behalf. What are some of those benefits that shippers realize when they have a strong freight claims management approach?
Certainly. The major benefit is going to be quicker resolution. So claims can take anywhere. Federal regulation states that carriers have up to 120 days to resolve a claim from the date that we file it. And that's quite a long time to be out a bit of money. So if a claim has robust evidence and either it's pre-mitigated or it's clear and concise, all of the above, you'll probably get your refund in a much more timely fashion than if there is that back and forth piece of it. I've seen claims dragged out for 3 to 6 months, sometimes even longer, when there's a need for that back and forth or additional action. So if you've got a $5,000 product that was damaged beyond salvage or repair, and you're sitting with a $5,000 loss for months until the claim is resolved, that's not exactly desirable. So the better prepared you are up front and the more efficient you are at freight claim management, the faster you'll be reimbursed and made whole again.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of benefits to effective freight claims management. Now, one of the things we also like to address whenever we're doing kind of these educational pieces of content, whether it's a blog post, white paper, or podcast like we are here, is we want to talk about maybe some common mistakes or misconceptions in the freight claim world that maybe shippers might have. It is a legal process. There's a lot involved, but there might be just some things that shippers think are true that aren't true, that are myths, or that they're doing wrong. What would you say to those folks on what to look out for?
I think shippers and consignees or receivers often think that because the carrier is the cause of the damage, that they do not play a big part in the process of the claim, they being the shippers and consignees. In reality, the consignee has a huge responsibility to ensure damage or shortage is recorded on the paperwork, and shippers also have a responsibility to mitigate their loss in any way possible. Any party involved really that's looking to recoup money lost has a responsibility to assist in proving liability. So carriers aren't going to openly incriminate themselves when they've caused the damage and they're on the hook for it. So any evidence that will prove carrier fault for the damage needs to be provided by the shipper or consignee. So they play a bigger part usually than they realize.
Well, that's key. Carriers are a part of it. Shippers are a part of it. And things go wrong. The key is to work together, right? And to make sure you have a shared sense of information. I think that's why it's really important to have a strong carrier relations approach as well. On the front end of negotiating rates or just in the day-to-day interactions of carriers, as they are a big part of how you effectively deliver to customers. So collaboration is super key. And finally, what would you say to those shippers who aren't filing freight claims effectively? And what could that mean to their business long-term if they don't, put a strong focus on it?
To put it pretty plainly, they're going to lose money. If shippers aren't filing or negotiating freight claims effectively, this can lead to denials where there may have been a chance at a settlement, but because the proper information or evidence wasn't provided, or adequate communication or time spent wasn't really there, the risk for denial increases exponentially. So therefore, if a shipper is consistently lacking on their damage claims, they'll be losing money in the long term.
Hey, and losing money's bad. Absolutely.
It's not good. Yeah.
Well, Carly, thanks so much for giving us a lot of great information around freight claims management. Heck, if I were a shipper, I'd want to listen to this podcast for sure so I could get more confidence. Of course, I'm going to go out and work with Progressive to try and get me a new Tesla and let you know how it goes.
Good luck on that.
Yeah. If it works, then maybe you can get a Lamborghini, whatever you want. We can do a whole new thing here. So anyway, thanks again, Carly, for your great insights and providing our listeners of the Freight Project podcast some really good information on effective freight claims management as you do this day in and day out on behalf of our customers here at Ceresys. And all the listeners out there for the Freight Project podcast, we thank you for tuning in to each episode. Carly, we're going to have you again on in the future. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Yeah, have a great day.
You as well.